Hi guys, welcome to Love and Lust audiobooks channel, updated daily with great audiobooks. So please subscribe to me if you don't want to miss it. The Lush Experience Part 3, Chapter 11 to 15. Chapter 11, A Luscious Experience. I was staring at my phone. Well, I was staring at the messages that were on my phone. The Lush app was fit to bursting with messages from my matches, trying to officially set up second date. We were still in it. It seemed no one was politely ghosting me or anything like that. I was surprised, honestly. Despite ending all 3 dates on a positive note, I had a feeling that things were almost too good to be true. Knowing my luck, sometimes they were. However, in this instance, I was glad to admit I was wrong. Instead, all 3 men were relatively receptive to getting to know me more. Now, with them all wanting a second date, and me being open to such a fact, I had to juggle 3 potential relationships along with everything else going on in my life. I knew myself well by now, and with the progress I was making on worn-down stones, I did need to get a certain amount of work done before I could accept meeting with anyone. The earliest I could start up dating again was Thursday. That was fine. I did get the work done. I always did. Yet my mind was floundering still now that I had some semblance of an original idea. It was currently starting that had me in a stranglehold of procrastination. Only this time around, I had to finish it, otherwise my experience with the Lush house would suffer, and River would then paid for nothing. The fact that I had to manage 3 men had my head in somewhat of a tailspin. I had never had this problem before. Then again, I'd never done anything like this before either. New experience, new problem. For some, they wouldn't rethink dating 3 men at a time, all who were rich and handsome. Mind you, wasn't really a problem. There were a lot worse things happening in the world. But for me, it left me at a bit of a loss what to do. Riverette's encouraging words had helped, and Vera and Karina were on my side for the whole ordeal, yet the whole thing still left me hesitant. There wasn't exactly a guidebook for how to balance multiple relationships. I needed to text them back beyond the vague greetings and well wishes. The first thing was to set up a date, while also making sure to not accidentally plan one at the same time as the other. Then what I just go on the date. I don't know why I felt so out of my depth. I'd been on dates before. This shouldn't be so hard, but I suppose part of the problem was that in those times I was focusing all my efforts into one person, not multiple. With the Lush Experience, you weren't exactly playing fast and loose without any ties or commitments, but it was still way more relationships to deal with than I was used to. The whole point of this was so that I could find a more permanent partner, and right now I just couldn't imagine it with any of them. It was just too early either, though. I'd only been on 1 date with all 3 of them, not spending nearly enough time to know them, but what I wanted was a partner. Someone who I could potentially have a future with down the road, maybe a marriage if we ever got there. And the more days that passed, the more I wondered if I would ever find it inside or outside of the Lush house. Was it possible that this could lead to my dream life? Who knows? All I knew was that I owed it to River to truly try. I was going to. However, of course, like any other person, I had boundaries in a relationship, and if I ever got to the point in these ones where they were discussed, I needed to make sure the other person fully understood them. Each person I met presented me with a slightly different pathway, and I could adjust as long as I was respected. On the other side of coin, I realized in my time alone that I needed someone who was as flexible as me. What I really wanted was someone I could get along with, someone who could understand me and could take things seriously when they had to. A partner could take a serious discussion and wouldn't brush me off. It wasn't just about a singular respect, but a mutual one. Everything else was a bonus. I do like to go on dates from time to time. I do like to cuddle and do simple romantic things, or have nights where we laid in bed for hours, or have mind-blowing love making, but again, bonuses. The fact of the matter was that in order to achieve all of this, a sort of commitment was needed, and I was nowhere near that being in the current arranging the second date stage. What did I want? Who did I want? This early, and I didn't know, I am sure, that as I went through the process, I figured that out. If I was being honest, all three men were extremely charming in their own way, and as it stood right now, I could end up with any one of them, or I could end up with none of them. So, I suppose I was dating three people right now. Hachim felt a bit sacrilegious. Carefully, I typed out messages to each of them to try and schedule our second dates. Anton would be busy for a bit and wouldn't be free for a while longer due to some volunteer work. But we scheduled our date for further out, for when he was free. Charles, on the other hand, seemed to have a similarly flexible schedule, so we'd be meeting up this week. It was far sooner than I was prepared for, but I could adjust. Luke had a business meeting he had to attend in Italy, but he noted that he'd be free next week for another date as well. The dates were all set up so easily. I felt a bit embarrassed for how much I was worrying about them, but I was right to be, wasn't he? I was trying to be serious about this. I knew that in the beginning, the Lush Experience was something I did for just that, for the experience. Yet the people I met were far more than I expected, and I couldn't help but like them. They were people I had the potential to have a relationship with, so I wanted to pursue that with a bit of sincerity to show that I was serious about this, that it wasn't just some fling or something I was doing for a fun time or my novel like I initially planned. Although it did inspire some good scenes for future books. Speaking of which, now that all of that was out of the way, there was only one thing left to do for tonight. Leandra needed 10 chapters from me in the next couple of days, and while I could write that it wasn't going to be fun, I was losing steam on writing more for worn down stones. The main characters had finally met, but there was something inherently delicate about this friendship they were building that I kept rewriting the scenes over and over again. Nothing was processing, and it was beyond frustrating. Much like the relationships I was currently dealing with, I didn't want to be flippant or dismissive. It was important to take my time with these things, though. Andre was of the opinion that I was taking too much time. I couldn't blame him. It was his job after all. He was required to be on me, so the publishers wouldn't be on him. However, moments like this in a novel needed to be just right in order to connect with the audience. And as much as I loved Andre and his ability to put up with me as a client, it still frustrated me that he didn't understand the caution I needed to take to really sell this pairing. So that being said, 10 chapters was a lot for me at the moment, except maybe if I worked on the celebration ball scene. For the next few hours, I lost myself to work. Words, moments, scenes, dialogue, backspace, redo not quite right. It was all terribly vexing, as much as I loved everything about it. Some books were easy. I had written a fantasy novel in a single month and got it published in another, while Weathering Storm was a book I had worked on for 5 years before even showing it to Andre for potential publishing. I had a story I was working on for 10 years, but still hadn't finished, while that procrastination book I shouldn't be working on had more chapters than worn down stones right now. There were so many pieces here and there scattered all over my laptop that I sometimes lost track of where I was in each process. But that was just how it went sometimes. Andrea and the publishers, though, didn't he get that entirely? They needed something and Andre had to deal with them for me. God rest his soul. The deadline he provided me with was to keep me going and show that I was producing despite my setbacks. Visible effort. My phone chimed as my half-written chapter stared back at me mockingly, and I eagerly took up the distraction. It was Charles. He wanted to go to the amusement park for our next date. God, when was the last time I'd been to an amusement park? Before college, if that. I used to love going to them, but I just never had the time when school took priority then. After graduating, I just never went. An amusement park date. How terribly storybook cliche. I loved it. I tried not to sound too enthusiastic as I texted back, and we agreed on a time we'd get there around opening time and leave sometime in the afternoon. Charles Donahue, renowned artist, very popular and well-known, continuing to rise in fame. The persona he put on for the public was indeed what I would call an extrovert, and I knew that he was invited to many celebrity parties. That persona and the person he was were different. The image I had of him was crushed. I felt a bit bad, actually, that I had an image to get crushed, an idea of who he was without getting to know him, without knowing him. It was wholly unfair to him that he should live up to my perceived ideas. I quickly found myself hoping that any image of who I thought he was completely out of my mind and crushed before I saw him again, so I could truly focus on redeeming myself and letting him show me who he truly was. When we met the other night, he didn't seem upset that I was a fan, nor did he seem insulted by the questions I asked. I was interested in the things he had accomplished. I just hoped that he'd be interested in me. I looked down at my buzzing phone to see another message from Charles. Looking forward to showing you who I really am. See you soon. I couldn't help the sneaky smile that crossed my face as I read what he said. Little did he know, I was looking forward to knowing who Charles Donahue really was, too. Chapter 12, Carnival Madness. We met at the entrance of the amusement park, and it wasn't hard to pick each other out of a crowd. Charles was dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, but it was easy to find him when he was signing an autograph for someone. The woes of being known, I suppose only he didn't seem too upset. If he wanted to be discreet, he would have worn some sort of disguise or picked somewhere more private, and the thought eased my mind just a little. Me, on the other hand, Karina Wood wept at the sight of me, but I still remembered the summer my mother hadn't lathered me up in sunscreen for some summer camp Old West field trip, and to say I burned like a skillet of bacon would have been an understatement. It wasn't a fun time, so I would rather die than have a repeat of that. The little fanny pack might have been a bit much, but my snapback and sunglasses fit perfectly for the sunny day. I wasn't one to dress up all cute if I was going to an amusement park. I wasn't here for adorable couple photos. I was here for a roller coaster, a churro, and quite possibly a turkey leg or slushy, the last two I wasn't particularly picky about. All my other clothes options would be reserved for a different location. Thankfully, no swimsuit or bikini was necessary since we both agreed we didn't want to go to the water park today. Someone looks ready, Charles noted with a smirk as he slid his own sunglasses back onto his face as if that would help him from getting recognized. Clark Kent syndrome, I suppose. He had such a recognizable face. I doubted they would help much. I haven't been to the amusement park in ages, so I am looking forward to this, I replied excitedly, his words not deterring me at all. What do you want to do first? How about rides then lunch? I am not about to go on the drop tower on a full stomach, let alone the turbo twister. A wise decision, I nodded solemnly, making him chuckle. The line wasn't too bad, even if it was starting to get a bit long. We got our tickets quickly, and amongst the children and other couples in the park, we made our way to the ride. Have you been to this amusement park before? Charles asked me as we got in line for one of the easier coasters titled the Loop-de-Loop. Yeah, but that was like 10 years ago, back when they still had the Pharaoh Sass Roth before the boat got decommissioned for almost doing a Tom, but, standard death trap stuff. Not this one, but now I am starting to wonder if there was a reason for that. He shivered at my previous comment. I couldn't help but laugh. You'll be fine. No one's ever died at this amusement park at least, and they've done some of their rides. I hope the churros are still good though. When I was 8 years old, I once saved an entire month's worth of allowance to buy like 20 churros. Did you throw up? He asked, slightly disturbed but curious. Only in a trash can after 8-year-old me thought they had an iron gut and rode the tilt-a-whirl right after. Oh, you were just asking to throw up at that point, he teased. Hey, I could fire out in the teacups instead. We both laughed and fell into a small silence. What about you? I asked, finally breaking it any childhood amusement park story. I once punched my friend because he kept making fun of me for calling it candy floss instead of cotton candy, even though I am. Right, Charles shrugged. At this, I burst out into even more laughter. What? My mother lived in England during her childhood, so she called it candy floss. He began. Whenever we went to a carnival or whatnot, she'd get me some candy floss, though Dad had always called it that. Oh, you should be seeing her face that day. She was so embarrassed that she had to explain to me what candy floss was. His voice was so animated speaking about his childhood and mother, and it warmed my heart slightly to the point I found myself smiling. How old were you? I asked. 7. The conversation continued for the rest of the line. We shared laughs and stories before we finally got seated on the roller coaster right up front. Once we were locked in, Charles leaned over to me, his cologne smelling fresh to my senses. I usually prefer to ride in the middle of the roller coaster, he whispered, as if someone were going to hear us. I questioned I am fine with anywhere as long as no one throws up mid-ride. The roller coaster started, and I gripped the plush bar that held us against the chairs as the kaya thunk of the chains rattled, dragging us up to the top. I don't too like hanging over the edge, suspension of disbelief and anxiety and all that. He waved off as we did just that. Makes you feel like you can get stuck in that position. Oh, if that happened, I'd be ruined for life, I laughed. Now you don't give yourself nearly enough credit. He winked, sending my heart into a spiral. On second thought, was it him or was it the fact that my feet were dangling over the edge? Before I could question it further, we were no longer suspended and instead racing down the tracks, screaming together. Normally, I wasn't the biggest fan of high places, but there was something exhilarating about being on a roller coaster where no one judged you for hollering or screaming. Blood pumping, hair flying back as you thrown about. Maybe there was just something fun about going so fast. Finally, it came to a halt, and we were let go from our seats. So I started as I climbed out of the cart and smoothed my hair. Which one next? The tilt-a-whirl. The tilt-a-whirl. Charles teased. You got to be kidding me. That's sad your pick. I shrugged. What can I say? I am simple-minded. No kidding. Charles smirked as we headed for the next ride. I had to admit that I was having a good time. Charles did show me more of himself, being more open as we talked. He was hilarious, just like his profile said, and his blunt words, more often than not, making me laugh. He had opinions, and he wasn't too afraid to say them. The afternoon heat eventually chased us to underneath one of the trees in the picnic area. We were sharing a candy floss and churro when my curiosity got the better of me. So what made you decide to become an artist besides the talent? I asked, tearing off a piece of candy floss as Charles stole a bite of my churro. Well, it started with the talent, actually. I was better than everyone else in my grade, so my parents wanted to help me grow, which evolved from there. What was really the deciding factor was admittedly small. In college, I was trying out different mediums while getting my bachelor's, and I hated the professor with every fiber of my being. Which course I pressed? Painting. Oh, he was just horrible at everything, Charles exclaimed. He made one girl cry because he kept demanding an explanation she didn't know how to give. It wasn't taught us anything useful, and the way he used charcoal like it was useless beyond the sketch for something better, I hated him with a passion. So I did nothing but charcoal drawings in every class. I had already used it before, but this time, I poured everything into it, and they got a lot of attention. I flunked out of that course, but I am very happy thinking that he's literally sitting in his office, still not knowing how to teach, while I am a famous artist. That is one of the best revenge stories I've ever heard someone tell me. I breathed, and Charles laughed. Most would call it petty, he noted with a tilt of his head. Oh no, extremely petty, but it sounded deserved and you were all the better for it. I hate teachers like that. I was very lucky to get good ones who encouraged me to continue with writing, though. I am curious as to what would thus happened if I went into the writing business, motivated by spite, I mused. Charles chuckled. You get really good at figuring out how loud you can type to irritate someone when you take notes. He paused and then turned his eyes to me. And you, what got you into writing? My grandmother, actually. Whenever I visited her, she would ask me for a story instead of the other way around. I had so much fun back then, and I'd plan out stories days in advance when I knew I was going over to try and tell her the best, most amazing one. Charles chuckled softly, looking fond, as if the memory was his own, and it made me smile, knowing how he understood how much those moments meant to me. I am glad you agreed to a second date, he said quietly after a moment. Ça surpris? I nodded, same. I was worried you wouldn't want to when you figured out I was a fan of your work. You read a lot more polite than some of my fans, he said teasingly before sobering up. But I do mean that you didn't try and push or ask for me to draw you or something. I scrunched up my face at the last mention. Does that happen often? Oh, like you wouldn't believe, he sighed. Like I said, some partners just want to try and be my muse, so it gets annoying. Well, as much as I would love to see your work, I'd only ask if you were comfortable with that, and in a you show me yours, I show you mine sort of deal. Then I'd be obligated to show you the book I was working on, and it is a hot mess right now. I would rather die than have you see my work progress. He laughed, and it was a full belly one that sounded beautiful. Now you have me curious. Should our next date be in my art studio? I slapped his arm. Come on, he snickered, finishing off his candy floss and standing up. We still have to ride the tower drop before lunch, and I don't know about you, but it's been ages since I've last had a corn dog. Oh, I could get behind that. I noted, are you a heathen who only uses ketchup for your corn dogs? Who the hell is only using ketchup? Mustard all the way, he said satisfactorily. What? No, the answer is both. You have to have both. He stopped walking and looked me dead in the eyes. I don't know if this will work out between us and Natress. We both paused, and within seconds, were in stitches. The sun was starting to go down by the time we made to leave the park, both of us on our second corn dog and judging each other. Set condiment choices. It's too sweet with ketchup, he said, shaking his head. Well, it's a way too salty with just mustard raw, but it's not bad. I admitted taking another bite, so, what's the verdict, Mr. Artist? Will we be seeing each other again? I think we can work something out. He murmured, I'll text you when I am free. It's been nice, Anais. This whole thing has been better than I thought it would. I feel the same. I admitted I did exactly go through with the Lush Experience to find someone, but we've been pleasantly surprised. Not just because you were my fan, I hope, he grinned. Oh, definitely not. You made good on your promise to show me more of yourself. And do you like what you see? He asked flirtatiously. Charles then wrapped an arm around my waist and pulled me close to his side. I quickly found myself leaning in, closer, breathing in the scent of his cologne. Once more. I like it very much, I muttered. So, do show me more. That can be arranged, he answered. Biting his lip, his eyes trailed to my mouth, and then back up again to my eyes. Say, on our next date. At that moment, I was all in. I think we have a deal. Chapter 13, Hotel Happiness. How do you compare thee to a summer day? How does one compare one date to the other and quantify the amount of fun that's been had? Is it possible to tally up the mood or what was done for you during it? I suppose that one had to judge by what the date itself was and how much joy it brought you, seeing as a dinner date was different from a date to the amusement park. It didn't help that I was attracted to both of the men doing such things for me, all three of them, actually. Luke and I had scheduled a dinner date a few days after my amusement park date. With Charles and I had to admit that I was looking forward to it. I was promised some of the best Shanaki around, so I was hoping it'd live up to the expectation. I suppose that was another thing, you had to judge what you were expecting out of said date. Somehow they were getting higher, and each date was meeting the next very quickly. I wasn't trying to be hypercritical, but I was starting to become hyper-aware that the Lush Experience was supposed to help me end up with one man, not make me fall for multiple. It wasn't doing the best job on that front, and the second date had only made me like Charles more. Only I was starting to feel like my second date with Luke would do the same. However, it was still too early to judge and to know, even though I wish I did, nothing could ever be easy, could it? At least it was fun though. That blue dress I had gotten with the girls was quickly being put to use since Luke told me the restaurant we were going to was rather fancy and that he'd pick me up at a little corner street. I told him I'd meet him at. It really was a beautiful dress with a sweetheart neckline and a fluttering layer of fabric that billowed when you walked. The little sheer jacket Vera grabbed also went well with it. Getting dressed up for dates was starting to become familiar again, and there was something about getting ready, doing my hair and makeup, and going through the motions that made me feel giddy, like when I was younger. There was something different to a date than the celebrations and dinners I deep into for work or business. Maybe it was because of the company I was in. I grabbed my phone and headed out, walking a few streets away from my apartment to wait on the corner. As sweet as my matches were, we weren't at the point where I wanted them to know where I lived, and that wasn't also recommended against in the Lush handbook. So, as I waited for Luke, I scrolled through my phone, pausing when I saw Rob on my feed. I sighed heavily. He was a bit too popular for me to be able to avoid him in the causal news feed my phone dragged up. Popular musician has finally broke into the top 10 on the billboards with his hit song, Loverboy. I rolled my eyes at the title of the article before scrolling past it. Back when we were dating, Rob was DJing and would get us into some wild and rather exclusive parties, some that were so over-the-top outrageous that when I think back to it, I don't know how I survived my college day. Wild was one way to put it. I'd never been very fond of that lifestyle, and now it was even rarer for me to end up in a club. Truthfully, it wasn't really my scene. I never ventured near that culture beyond going to the bar with the girls, and even then, it was far more peaceful and quiet than those parties ever were. Rob always had talent, but hadn't he always used it and coasted through jobs, something we had argued about? Well, it was just one of the things we argued about. After we broke up, he rose to stardom and started to produce his own music. Despite the change, we went our separate ways and just never contacted each other again. A few articles down, and there he was again. Is Robert Evans dating Camila Levine? After reading the article, as title, I realized the girl in the picture was the same one from the Ferrari when I crashed into it, that gorgeous blonde girl. That's why she looked a bit familiar. She was an extremely popular dancer and usually starred in music videos, but also performed on some big stages with big names, Rob being one of them. Karina had worked with her on a few modeling gigs, and I recognized her from the magazine covers in my collection. I still remember when Karina cried hard enough to ruin her makeup when she realized I collected all the magazines she was in, like a proud mother watching their daughter succeed. And I was proud. She'd come a long way from having to drive 2 hours to make it to her first gig. Now people sent cars to her. Speaking of cars, a limo pulled up to the corner, and I tried not to gape as the window rolled down. I didn't do a very good job with how Luke says amused gaze met mine. You came in a limo, I asked, astonished. It helps set the mood. I'm taking my gorgeous date out for a fancy dinner. This surprised me even more. You own a limo. Of course, it's a private escort to the hotels for the clientele we receive, and you are a very important client, he smirked. Well, you sure know how to make a girl feel special, I chuckled as the driver got the door for me. I thanked him softly as I slipped inside. The limo was made of all leather seats and smooth wood accents, with LED lights lining the edges of the glass. Would you like anything to drink? Luke asked, gesturing to the built-in cooler and wine selection. Pre-dinner drinks, I can only handle so many, I teased. Something light. Then he noted with a smile, it's a bit of a drive, but I promise the food will be worth it. Well, if that's coming from you, maybe something light is a good choice. Hey, champagne, he offered, glasses already ready. I nodded. Just a glass. The champagne was cold and bubbly, perfectly stored, and the glasses had to be made of crystal just from the feel and the weight in my hand. The atmosphere between us was comfortable as soft jazz music played on the speakers, and we made small talk about music. When we were pulling up to the restaurant, I stared wide-eyed at the sight. That's not a restaurant, I muttered numbly, and Lucas chuckled. Yes, it is. The restaurant's just inside. That's your hotel, I replied, shaking my head. Well, yes, we thought about outdoor dining, but left that to the rooftop bar. I stared at the hotel, the Rogel Hotel. It was ranked 5 stars, with a Michelin 4-star restaurant that sometimes even hotel guests couldn't get into with all the reservation backlog they had. I supposed that didn't matter, though, when you were the literal owner. I did promise you good Dranacci, and I made sure the chefs here could make a good one. Shall we? Luke stepped out of the car and offered me his hand. It was a real red carpet moment right there, red carpet and everything. I felt like a celebrity as he helped me out of the car. It's gorgeous, I couldn't help but say, staring at the beautiful hotel lobby. Tall ceilings with beautiful light fixtures made the space seem so luxurious, and art pieces were scattered about, from towering sculptures to glittering crystal chandeliers. The staff were also in a class of their own, their uniforms pristine as they led us to a private table in something that looked like a private garden for one of the rooms. We were surrounded by lush plants and beautiful flowers with strings of lights arching overhead. I was almost overwhelmed by how beautiful everything was. This was unlike any date I had ever been on. For the entire night, we were weighted on hand and foot. "This is amazing," I gushed as I tried the granity Luke had vouched for. It was delicious, and I was sorely tempted to order another plate, but they brought practically a dozen little dishes for us, along with flutes of champagne and tiny little dessert. A bit too many desserts and champagne, flutes it seemed, since I was a little more than tipsy by the end of the dinner. "Well, it's a good thing I did drive here, but I should probably call a cab," I murmured. The night was magical, but it was starting to get late, as in very late. "What? No, the drive is so far. Let me set you up in a room." I was getting drunk, but definitely not that drunk. I shook my head. I couldn't talk. "I insist. Buy own a hotel if you can. To even use the rooms in it. I promise it. I'm perfectly fine. Stay the night, then tomorrow I'll get a car to take you home. It's so safer that way." I caught all right. You make it hard to argue. I chuckled. I've just been told I am a shrewd businessman when I want to be. Our arms were linked as he led me to what looked to be one of the fancy suites, one that might just be bigger than my own apartment. I unfortunately was a bit too happy to fully appreciate it, but I knew it was fancy, pretty, and shiny. "Since you staying the night, how about breakfast in the morning? I'll have it sent up to your room," Luke offered. "Hotel breakfast as well. Now you were trying to spoil me. How about I meet you in your room so we can enjoy it together? Just breakfast." I noted. I was stressed, but he just smiled back at me. Seeing this beautiful face first thing in the morning, I'll look forward to it then. Luke leaned down, pressing a kiss to my lips, which I eagerly returned. It was like an explosion went off inside my mind. I hadn't kissed anyone since my breakup with Rob, and it was like I was taking the training wheels off all over again. The way his lips moved in tandem with mine was extraordinary. I wasn't expecting this to be the way we ended the night, but I wasn't mad at it either. It was soft and gentle, yet just as hungry as mine was. We both had wanted this, and now it was happening. However, Luke wasn't pushing it further than what it was. He was eager, yes, but he was respectful, and I found it almost as erotic as any steamy, forceful kiss would then be. When he finally broke away, he stood still, staring me in the eyes. His hand reached up and brushed my cheek before falling to my own hand. "Good night, and I guess," he said, his voice low and husky. He kissed the back of my hand and then headed down the hallway. Man, I was really looking forward to breakfast. After he left, I stumbled to bed, and I don't know whether it was the champagne or I was just that tired. But in only a few minutes, I was out cold. When I woke up, I miraculously wasn't suffering from a hangover, but the room might had something to do with that. I swore it was nicer than my apartment. I managed to wake up early. Maybe I was just excited, but the luxurious bathroom was calling my name, and the tub with jets was put to good use. I was putting on a fluffy bathrobe and slippers when I saw a note near the door on the little entrance table. And it was a key card for a floor on the upper levels and a letter saying breakfast was served. Well, then I shouldn't keep Luke waiting. I made my way up the elevator, stopping at the fancy door and inserting a key and heading into the even nicer suite than I'd been in, with a view overlooking the city. Anais. Good morning, Luke greeted me. A table full of silver dome dishes in front of him as he stood up to meet me, greeting me with a kiss I eagerly returned. Good morning. Did I keep you waiting? Not at all. You were right on time. That's good. I hummed against his lips. We had yet to pull apart, and I found my skin tingling at his touch. You were very distracting, he chuckled, pressing a kiss to my neck, and I tilted my head, giving him more space. The food's going to get cold. I don't mind. Do you? I asked, breath hitching as he nipped at my skin, because I'd love to continue where we left off last night. Last night, where I'd been a bit too drunk for anything, and Luke had understood, setting me up in a room and not pressing for anything. It made me all the more eager to continue when I was sober, and just as willing. You make a good argument, he hummed, pulling back and grinning down at me. I suppose we should start with a little something sweeter than breakfast. You read my mind, I smiled back, allowing him to pull me to the bed. Breakfast, in fact, did get very cold when we finally remembered to eat it. Chapter 14, Coffee and a Breakdown. A few days had passed since my date with Luke, and I couldn't hold out any longer. I needed to talk to someone about what was going on in my mind. The first person I thought to call was River. We set up a time to chat the next day, and I was anxious. When I saw her enter the cafe and she sat down, I immediately jumped to it. I have a problem. Hi to you two, Anais, River said with a smirk. Right, mannered. Sorry, I replied quickly, shaking my head. Hi, it's so good to see you. We really have to go out more often. Now I have a problem. Not quite the greeting I wanted to give River, who was giving me an amused look across the cafe table, but it was too late to rescind it, and I already screwed it up too much to really fix it. Still, it showed my current mental state well, which was not good. Nothing had gone wrong on my dates. It was quite the opposite, actually. Everything was going too well, and I was texting and calling all three boys like they were regular relationships and not what was actually going on. I was basically dating three guys at the same time, all of them aware of that, thank God, but it did not help my mental state, nor the stress it brought me. Whatever this triplet timing was, it was not helping me get back in the game anymore. I felt like I had a bit too much game. That was never something I had ever had to worry about before, nor was that something I ever wanted. My date with Luke was magical, just breathtaking from start to finish. I had woken up in the most luxurious room I'd ever seen. Pulled straight from a novel with how picture perfect it was, from the comfortable mattress and warm sheets to the morning glow of the tall glass windows. I felt like real royalty, and the events that took place after dinner and before breakfast the next day were something I'd never forget.
I didn't think I'd be ready to kiss anyone anytime soon, but when I kissed you, it felt real wonderful.
Was that what it would feel like if I kissed all of them? I had to admit, attracted me in their own way, and I couldn't tell but wonder what Anton and Charles' lips felt like. Quoi? And if that were the case, how would I ever choose between them? Then I got home, settled in, and proceeded to have a slight breakdown over the mental dilemma. Just a slight one. I had a problem with no answer in sight, a problem I didn't think I would have, but was getting realer and bigger by the day. I really needed to address it. Now, maybe I wouldn't have a solution, but at least I wouldn't be blindsided in the future like I would be if I ignored it. Thankfully, I could talk to River about this. Otherwise, I'd have to go to Luna. Luna was darling Dante, get me wrong, but this was a bit more intimate than trying to play pass or smash professionally. She was free for the afternoon, and as much as I loved Marcus, I was going to steal his girlfriend's presents from him. For the time being, desperate times called for desperate measures, and cake. There were 3 cakes between us. River probably having guessed my mood the moment I asked her to meet up with me. She knew me so well. If only I could greet her like a normal person instead of whatever I was at the moment. Things would go a lot smoother, but I supposed there was nothing I could do about that. I always got spastic when the stress really started to hit. River smiled sympathetically and reached a hand across the table to soothe me, tell me everything. I am looking forward to it. She grinned. You've had, 2 more dates, and it's barely been 2 weeks. I am dying to know what's happened in so little time. She let go of my hand, and I collapsed into my seat across from her. Everything happened. You slept together, she said, wide-eyed. Oh, okay. Not everything, but it feels like that. Let's start with guy number 3. On date number 2, he took me to the amusement park. Wow. I started to give River a play-by-play. I told her about my date with Charles and how much fun we had, how we talked for hours going on rides and shared childhood stories, and about how I felt like I really got to know who he was. I felt like I could be myself around him, and I laughed at River's long, suffering sigh when I told her what I wore and how Charles did judge me like she was. However, it didn't stop her from her eyes at that little tidbit. Charles was a bit abrasive, but he was sweet inside, which I found myself liking. He reminded me a bit of River with how blunt he could be, but he made me laugh and smile so effortlessly at the same time. I gushed about the dinner I had with Luke for our second date and how he went above and beyond, making me feel like a real live princess. I boasted about the service and meal we shared. Then I went into detail about how much of a gentleman Luke was, getting a room for me instead of sending me back home drunk. I also spilled a little more about our kiss outside my room, noting Luke's ability to make me feel safe, while also sharing how we continued our antics the next morning. River was hanging on my every word, and I couldn't help but smirk a little at her reaction. In all honesty, Luke was just the sweetest and treated me like I was precious. I had never had a date put so much effort into the second date, let alone everything after it. I felt special with him. Both dates were just all over. Amazing, fun, wonderful, fantastic, and all the synonyms. I don't really see a problem, aren't things going well? River asked as I stirred my tea, which was starting to get cold from how long I was talking. That is the problem. They were going too well. I thought this was supposed to be easier. Like, I know if we work out or not, but they've all been great, and we get along well. I could really see myself getting together with any of them. After 2 dates, River asks, somewhat judgmentally, "That's not what I mean." I sighed. I just shouldn't there be like a bad apple or something, a huge turnoff. That'll say, this isn't the guy. I know I get along with people pretty well, so I guess I am just worried that I can see if we were really working out or not. You've been out of the game too long, if that is a genuine concern you have. Anais said it. It's a good thing your matches are so good. It gives you variety. God knows how well someone would do if their dating pool ranging partners boiled down to Prince Charming and Mysterious Vampire. Despite myself, I snorted, trying to hold back my laughter. Well, one could be Prince Charming, having a royal title and all, but I think we can cross vampire off of the list. See, you've already got something that would be a deal breaker. I set down my teacup in the saucer and huffed. I just think things have been going too well. Like, where's the other shoe? I went in with low expectations, and now they're being blown out of the water makes me a bit nervous. Again, the opposite of a problem. You read too serious sometimes. River scolded me gently. God, you sound like Rob. I complained. I am not always serious. I just think that some things need to be taken seriously, like relationships. I don't want one where I am just going to be fooling around, I know that how you are, but maybe instead of thinking, can I get along with this guy, ask yourself, can they give me what I want? I knew she was right, but it still did help. I don't think I know what that is anymore. I replied softly. I thought I did, but after meeting these guys and seeing how different they were from their jobs and lives to their personalities, I wasn't so sure I knew what I wanted for myself, let alone for my future. I wasn't exactly planning to get a ring out of it, but what if that changed? Then figure it out, River told me bluntly, before taking another bite of cake. Good old River. I could always count on her to give it to me straight and make me feel stupid. Before I could say anything more, my phone buzzed for a moment. I thought it was one of my matches, and despite how things had been going so well, I made a face. Oof, bad news, River asked. It's Luna, actually. I frowned reading the message, my eyes going wide there as a fourth match. I knew I had the unlimited golden ticket, but these weren't exactly candy bars I was getting. That's good, River noted casually. Usually it takes a bit longer for them to find someone. How is she acting so calm? River, I exclaimed. I am already struggling with 3. How am I supposed to deal with 4? Hey, it's I. Right, she stated, reaching for my hand again. If you need some time, then take some time. If they can't, I respect that. Then they were not the one. Not all on you to balance this. They were in the same boat as you, especially since they probably don't know who they want either. I know, but Anais, you acting like you have to find Mr. Right this moment. You dated Rob for almost 2 years before you decided to break up with him. You don't need to rush this. You were right. I noted it just feels a bit shitty to go back and forth between guys. Some women would say that side the opposite of a problem. She snorted, letting go with a pat on my hand. Just be honest with them. As long as they're in the loop, it'll be fine. You all here for the Lush Experience, so enjoy the Lush Experience. You don't owe them details, you owe them transparency about where they stand and where you stand, and I think you doing a damn good job at it. You worry because you care, and caring sell fine. But a name, Naya? Yeah, stop worrying, she practically ordered. Yes, I loved my friends so much, even if from time to time they called me stupid. It's usually when I was being stupid, and despite her gift being the reason I was in this so-called mess, I was thankful to have her by my side through it all, especially as someone who had done it before. How have you been though, River? No drama, I asked, changing the subject slightly. Honey, you were the one who has all the drama going on. She tutted. Now tell me more about your last date. It sounded like fun. We chatted for the rest of the afternoon, and I found myself more at ease with everything. I was worrying a bit too much, and it wasn't exactly helping me or anyone else. Just enjoy it and figure it out later. It would have to come to me at some point, right? I looked at the profile of the 4th person I'd been matched with. Flirty, sweet people person. Not sure what to make of that. Flirty wasn't usually a good character trait, but more of a general analysis of their personality, like how Anton had humanitarian and Charles had extrovert. So my next match was flirty and a people person. That would certainly be interesting. I confirmed our meeting for the Lush house and focused back on River. I'd worry about getting prepared for the date later. Chapter 15, Second Chances. Match number 4, date number 1, and we were meeting at the Lush house. It had been a while since I'd been back to it, so I was excited that I might have the chance to explore it some more. It really was a beautiful building with equally grand grounds. I hadn't seen nearly enough the first time, nor did I think I'd ever really finish exploring the place. There was always something new to look at. A few more art pieces were added to the walls, and I recognized an oil on canvas that had gotten some attention in the Modern Art Museum, though I couldn't place the artist. Once more, I felt nervous about what would happen, along with the anticipation that was starting to grow familiar. Would I get along with this match, or would things go horribly wrong? And again, what did I want out of this relationship? We could get along, yes, but what did I want? What did I need? I knew I didn't need gifts or every moment to be extravagant and grand, even if it was fun. But I don't think I could stand simple monotony or just general companionship. Either I needed something beyond that. I really should. We thought about this more before getting into this. That was my fault, though. And this wasn't exactly the time to figure it out, either. I was lingering around the entrance, waiting for my match, and scoping out potential date ideas by staring at the giant map and list of accommodations the Lush house provided. Not horseback riding, didn't know nearly enough about that to try, but maybe the pasta making class they were offering. That sounded like it could be fun to do with someone. Picnic might be nice, so would visiting the gardens. It was getting close to the height of summer, so something had to be in full bloom back there. I still did feel like having a pool date, even though I was curious as to what their setup would be. It was easy to burn time when it was all so interesting. I barely noticed the door open, but I turned to greet my fourth match and stared Robert Evans, my ex, in the face. Rob, whose jaw had only sharpened and hair grown longer in the time we weren't together. I had barely noticed it the last time we saw each other, not really in the right mind to remember every little detail. This wasn't an evil twin or sibling either. Rob didn't have siblings, as much as I wish this wasn't Robert, but his parallel self. Dealing with that would be infinitely more easier than whatever was happening now. Time slowed down, and I didn't dare to breathe. The Lush house only ever had one match inside of it at a time besides the staff, unless they were doing a big mixer, as I had learned from Luna when I followed a trail of questions to sate my curiosity. This was not a mixer, and there was no one behind Robert Evans. It was just him, staring at me with wide eye. It was my fourth match, and I was going to go to Luna and cry about this. Or maybe River, poor Luna, couldn't have known how she almost killed me from a heart attack. And Rob began. But I was a coward. I wasn't ready for this. I didn't want this. So I ran. And us wait, Rob cried out, unbidden. I found myself pausing halfway to the stairs to hide away in whatever room to call Luna and end this match. But I know, but I couldn't just run from this. I couldn't feel like that would solve anything about this situation as much as I wanted it to. No, unfortunately, I had to talk to him to understand what was going on so I could end this. I told Rob I owed him a coffee. I suppose it was time to give it. I cried, just give me a moment, I said, holding up a hand and massaging my face. Screw the makeup. This didn't feel like a date anymore, so much as it felt like an intervention. They have a fancy espresso machine in the kitchens. I believe I owe you that cup. Yeah, that'd be great. We made our way to the kitchens, and thankfully, the machine was easy enough to use. I grabbed 2 cups and started it up to make regular coffee. The smell was almost overwhelming, and I remembered how Rob would start his morning with coffee but would wake up after me, so I'd always make a pot for him. Here, Rob placed a small container of creamer down next to me, and I bit my lip. I might vet preferred tea, but I'd always have a bit of coffee when I made a pot, just with an obscene amount of creamer. Seems we both still remembered that little tidbit about each other. It was silent as I passed him his cup and started to doctor up mine. How have you been? I asked, not looking at him. I didn't think I could bear to at the moment. I've been better, actually. When did you start the Lush Experience? I decall his tone accusatory if I didn't have the exact same question for him. Right after my birthday, the ticket was a gift and you thought you were dating Camila. I actually met her through the Lush house. He noted, we didn't work out. We already ended things before I tried to find another partner. I haven't had much luck with this Terrace, answered with a rueful smile. I almost said can't relate, but I held my tongue. I wasn't trying to start something. Getting coffee meant we wouldn't be at each other's throats and would catch up. That's why it was surprising to see you. I thought kind and whimsical was a little familiar. Well, that answered my question about my character profile Luna set me up with. Funny, I was the exact opposite though. I should have guessed flirtatious and people person was you. He chuckled softly, and I tried not to let the silence consume us again. Look, Rob, I'm sorry. Can I say something first, Anais? I think I know what you're gonna say, and I need to get this off my chest before you say it. It was a bit irritating to be interrupted, but Rob was looking at me, slightly desperate, the words about to spill out. And we didn't break up on the best of terms. No, it was more like we had to break up. He wasn't stupid either. He knew me well enough to know what I was going to say, that I was going to stop this before it even began. But something was different about him. Even back when I crashed our cars, I knew something had changed from who he used to be, so I stayed silent and gestured for him to continue. I'm sorry, he started. I've owed you an apology for years after we broke up, I realized a lot of things, and you were right. I didn't and wasn't taking things seriously enough, and I almost ruined my career before it even began. In that moment, it just hit me that this wasn't okay, and I needed to pull my shit together. I was at a loss of what to do. Never in a million years did I expect this conversation, let alone an apology. Not after I blocked Rob's number, because I literally just couldn't deal with it anymore. How was I supposed to reply to this? How do you reply to this, Raba? When it hit me how much I was screwing up by just messing around, I felt like the biggest dick. I fixed my career, but I couldn't contact you. I ruined things between us because I didn't listen. So I guess thank you for always listening to me even now. I finally found the word. You've really changed. I almost whispered. I like to think I did. He stated softly. That's why you don't have to say yes, but can we give this a try again? We didn't work out very well last time. Rob, I noted, hoping to jog his memory. I know he nodded, but things are a bit different now. I'm not that insensitive asshole who won't listen. If you don't want this to continue, I'll listen, but Anais pushing us into breaking up was the biggest mistake of my life. At the very least, I'd like to get to know each other again without the awkwardness. As much as I didn't want to admit it, I missed Rob when we were dating. He'd basically been my best friend alongside my boyfriend. We were close. That's why our breakup was so bad, hurt so bad. Could we go back to being friends? Should we even try? Who's to say we wouldn't have another falling out? Who's to say we could even stay friends? I absolutely hated not having answers when it came to situations like these. Why couldn't I write about relationship instead, where the emotions would be so clear cut to me when I would understand what everyone was thinking and how to proceed? Instead, I was left confused by my own feelings and blindsided by Rob's own. But I was weak and I missed my friend and I was so stupid. Well, I do think we need a redo of going out to get coffee since this isn't exactly what I had in mind last time. Rob lit up at my words, grinning widely. Just friends, Rob, I added. He nodded eagerly. I know, but you have to understand. I didn't think I would ever even see you again. So this is already incredible. I didn't expect to even see you today, let alone here. I smiled gently. Yeah, me neither. I'll schedule a second date, he began eagerly. Through the Lush app, he quickly reassured me. We can keep our communication to the app if you do prefer that, but we can set up a second date for actual coffee instead of at the Lush house. The idea was appealing. The Lush Experience did provide an extra layer of security than just trying to exchange phone numbers and hope for the best. Do you still like those little cafes that serve cake and scone? Yeah. I know a good one we can go to. I'll drop you a pin through the app. Alright, are you free Wednesday? This was actually happening. I'll make time, Rob promised me. I couldn't believe this was actually happening. I was going to go and get coffee with my ex-boyfriend. I had just re-met through the Lush Experience as my fourth match. Despite how things were turning out, I was going to have to talk to Luna about the vetting process and possibly making a Dawn T ever match me with this person, even if they were not in the program. Surprises like this just weren't too good for my heart. It was still beating furiously. I drank more coffee as Rob showed me photos of the cafe on his phone that was Jeter-Mycene, and I blamed it. Sass-pace on the cafe? That's all it was, coffee. This part has ended. Thank you for listening. If you would like to continue listening to the next part, please let me know by leaving a comment.